All right, we got a couple more calls to get through. We're already over time, and I'm going to try to get through these. We've got Zach in Fresno has a question about Matt's compatibilist views in terms of rationality, which you might not be up to date on this, but we'll go ahead.
Yes, sorry. So I realized we're at the end of the show, so I'll try to make this as quick as possible. And to be honest, your previous dialogue with Phil there might just be a sufficient answer to this question. But a while ago, a long while ago, you had a debate with a gentleman named Eric Hernandez on the existence of the soul.
Yes.
And at some point in the debate, he challenged you, Matt, about how you could trust your own thought processes if everything was in fact determined. And at the time, the answer you gave, I felt like you made a pretty good point. But I thought about it a little more, and I'll just try to lay this out as clearly as
I can actually address this real quick because it's easy. Whether or not my thought processes are determined is utterly irrelevant to whether or not they are accurate. And so the accuracy of my thought processes are tested by reaching conclusions, making predictions about the world, and then seeing if they come through. It's the same way you would test anything, any hypothetical model, is to put it to the test and see what kind of predictions you get back. That lets you know the reliability of the model, and whether or not it's a deterministic process in my brain, or whether or not there's a soul or some indeterminacy or some switch flips, it doesn't matter. The determinacy part is irrelevant, because in a deterministic universe or in a non-deterministic universe, I have thought processes that are either going to be accurate or not. And the one and only test of how accurate my thought processes are is how they consistently lead to useful and accurate conclusions.
Okay. And I guess you don't care if those, like, useful and accurate in this instance, it doesn't have to be absolutely useful or absolutely accurate?
No. I'm not sure how anybody could demonstrate absolutes in that sense. So, for example, I play a lot of games. I love games. In many games, I'm up against other people. And so there's this really cool aspect of game theory there where I'm thinking about what the other person is doing. And for that, I have to have a theory of mind, a theory that there is another mind there, and try to make predictions about what that person's doing. Sometimes you're going to get it right. Sometimes you're going to get it wrong. But there are people who are better at this and people who are worse at this. But when it comes to something that's not that kind of game, where I'm trying to make an understanding of the universe, then for those sorts of things, it is about assessing the evidence and making sure that I'm removing as much bias as I can. I don't know that I could ever remove all bias. And the test for that becomes, if Stephen comes to me and says, "Oh my gosh, you've got a hidden fallacy here," and he shows me, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, that actually, I smuggled a premise in there and I had no idea." What that does is it recognizes that there is a model that I improperly exercised and that I can recognize this and correct for it. And at no point does that mean that either of us was actually correct, because my conclusion might have been correct for the wrong reasons. He could still spot a fallacy, and it could be that we're both wrong. But this process of constantly improving your reasoning abilities through critical thinking, skepticism, scientific methods, things like that, they are demonstrably the most reliable methods to an accurate understanding of the world. We got.
Right then. I got to yield. So.
Oh, okay. I'm going to try and get the other call, but I'm also going to let Stephen address this offline because you've got like a hum on your line. But I don't know if you had something to add or correct.
No, not really. There is no hidden fallacies from what I could tell.
But, and we could both be wrong.
Exactly. What was interesting there is that the topic of determinism and whether or not the world is deterministic or not doesn't need to necessarily be conflated with or have some kind of issue with epistemology. They're like separate things to me. So I was a little bit confused by how the two.
You would have been very confused, as was I, on Thursday when Eric Murphy debated David Wood. I was there, and one of the things that he pointed out was that an atheistic universe is necessarily a naturalistic, deterministic universe. And I'm like, wow, those things aren't necessarily connected the way you'd like to. This guy supposedly has a PhD in philosophy, but his main argument was that in a deterministic universe, there is no reasoning or rationality. And so the question that I asked her in the Q&A was, does playing a game of chess require reasoning and rationality? And David said yes. And then I asked him, when Google's DeepMind got a soul, that allowed it to escape a deterministic universe, because the AI is clearly deterministic, whether it's in a deterministic universe or not. That's the way it's programmed. And yet, without giving it any backstory on chess games or chess history, and just telling it what the rules of chess are, and giving it an artificial intelligence that allows it to analyze and play itself, it learned everything humans know about chess within 4 hours and can beat all of us. So it could beat me probably in about 15 minutes or less. If that's the case, and it requires us, if chess requires reasoning and rationality, and you have a deterministic computer that is able to reason about a chess game better than any of us, then clearly your premise is flawed, that you can't have reasoning. You know? And he's like, well, you can program a calculator to say 2 + 2 = 5, but that doesn't make it reasonable or reasoning. And you're right.
It's just a difference of complexity, and differences, like with what we were saying here with alpha, it's just able to process more information. And what happens in the end is the move that it makes looks very informed, very intelligent, very conscious. We happen to know it's not. Yeah. And so we can extend that further.
I was going to continue after that, but it wasn't my debate and wasn't my questions. There was a guy that came up afterwards who was an engineer dealing in AI and data stuff. I'm going to post a video, in addition to Eric's debate, I'll post a video of Eric and I discussing that, but also I'm going to discuss what happened after the debate during the questions, because I was going to extend that, if I had time, to say, okay, you want to write off a computer as deterministic as not being able to reason. And my argument is that it can reason, and that the only functional difference between that level of AI right now and my brain is that they're different in how they process things, and mine is the product of millennia of evolution of a data processing, world interpreting machine. And so perhaps mine is more efficient. Mine is more currently superior in some aspects of analyzing reality. But I don't see how you can say that an AI isn't doing exactly what I'm doing, and in some cases doing it better.
Yeah, if we define reasoning as looking at the rules and playing according to them, then it is literally reasoning. Yeah. And when it comes to us, it's like, we may be more complicated still, or be able to function on a different wavelength to the machines. But the machine isn't always thinking, damn, I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Or let's go sleep. So this is predominantly why alpha is so good at chess. It can just do chess. And they've extended that to StarCraft now, and it's working with incomplete information.
They're also going to be extending it to medical research.
Scary good.
Yeah.
Scary good.
It's an interesting thing. The guy afterwards was talking to me about, well, the real secret to AI is the data and how it processes data. And I'm like, yes. And that's the real secret to what's going on in my brain. And if there's anything there that is confusing us, it's because I would argue that it's the thing that we label intuition. Because our brains seem to have a capability of quickly assessing data and leaping to what we would call an intuition. Like, I feel it's this way. And I don't know why that can't be viewed as just I'm making a probability assessment, and as long as those particular probability assessments keep being useful, then that intuitive part of my brain, which I don't think intuition is the right label for it, but that we call it that jump, that I'm going to quickly skip through all the data to find the one thing in the data that is relevant. That's how we tune it. That is tuning your brain. It's so that you don't, I'm going to rely on my gut. Well, you can train your gut in that sense.
Yeah.
Obviously, my stomach's not thinking, so if you're going to call